been a series of reports published by News24 today saying that tenders coming to the amazing total of 174 billion rand are being investigated for alleged corruption. The reports point to a slush fund that was used by some executives who are no longer with Eskom. Amid the reporting is a claim that one company made what was called a strategic payment to a foundation that was named after David Mabuza. Well, let's find out a bit more about it. Pieter du Toit is the assistant editor at News24. Peter, good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time. Look, it's a huge amount of money that's involved in these tenders. I presume there's a series of different tenders involved in this that are all related to different projects. Is it possible to know how much money might actually have been siphoned off?
It's look, Stephen. It's Eskom. First of all, Eskom is an enormous business. It's an enormous entity with. It's one of the biggest employers in the country. It has, over the last 20 years, commenced with some of the biggest mega build projects, capital projects ever undertaken in the country's history. Which means there was a lot of opportunity for graft, for corruption, for kickbacks, for bribes, and the documentation that we've that we've got access to now just gives us a glimpse, and I have to emphasize a glimpse, into the depth of the rot at Eskom. You know, you mentioned the silly amount of 178 billion. Now, that's the value of contracts which is under investigation. And that was in 2019. That number might well have increased by a significant amount in the intervening years. But there are literally hundreds and thousands of contracts that Eskom have entered into over the last decade. And many of these have been found now to be tainted by corruption. But it's still early days to form a comprehensive picture. What we have seen, given the documents that we've got, is that corruption is endemic at Eskom, and both the taxpayer and Eskom have, over the last decade, certainly lost billions of rands to graft.
There are different things that happen here. One of them seems to involve senior managers, people who are no longer with the company. How did this money move around? I mean, it seems there was even some kind of slush fund involved.
Yes, indeed. You know, one of the shocking aspects when you trawl through the documents is to see the brazen manner in which many of these executives went about their business, soliciting bribes, accepting kickbacks, and using their official Eskom email addresses to do so. We will be reporting in the next couple of days about a specific executive who wanted spending money ahead of the weekend, and if he did not get the spending money, he would have had a hand in cancelling a contract, and then the receipt of payment was emailed to him within the hour, and he scored a cool almost 400,000 rands to spend on a weekend. So the brazen way in which this network of corruption was allowed to flourish at Eskom was quite shocking, but we also need to look at this in context. It was at the height of state capture, when Eskom certainly was considered to be at ground zero of state capture. So it seems to be that a culture of corruption flourished at Eskom. So they did use vehicles like private companies where multinationals paid kickbacks into, and that money was simply withdrawn by Eskom executives to fund lavish lifestyles.
When we talk about state capture, a lot of people automatically think of one particular family. They think of the Guptas. They often think of a former president. However, what we've seen, for example, with the testimony around Bosasa, is that there are lots of different elements. What I'm trying to get to is, does it look like at Eskom there was one sort of controlling network of money that seemed to benefit one group of people, or were there different groups of people who were benefiting in different ways due to just a culture of sort of lax financial control?
Different groups, Stephen, different groups. It's, you know, what we're seeing at Eskom is, given the identities of some of the executives and the chief executive officers who were running Eskom during that time, if you consider who the ministers of public enterprises were, people like Malusi Gigaba and Lynn Brown, you know, it was a culture that seemed to have permeated the whole organization, and you had different areas of the organization where you had different networks of patronage. We are writing about a very specific area of Eskom for the moment where you could see senior executives, and these are senior people who served on Eskom's management team, who seem to have run a fiefdom. In this specific instance, it revolved around the Kusile power station, that one of the 3 mega build projects, so-called mega build projects. And if you go and visit Kusile, you can see the enormity and the size of those projects. That translated into billions of rands of contracts, Obviously that translates into a couple of million rand in silly money for these executives. But to answer your question, different networks which permeated the whole of the company.
Then this payment to the David Mabuza Foundation, I mean, it's money that seemed to come, I think, from an American company, a subsidiary of General Electric. How did this payment work?
Indeed. So we have come across documentation. We have come across correspondence between a senior Eskom executive who thanks General Electric for their generous contribution to Eskom's corporate social investment program, 100 million that this specific Eskom executive seemed to have been able to secure from GE, and then almost immediately sends off a letter to the David Mabuza Foundation inquiring not only sharing the fact that they will be making a donation of 30 million rand, but also specifically asking the David Mabuza Foundation how it wanted the money transferred, what vehicle does it want the money to be transferred under. So we have not yet been able to ascertain whether that money was indeed transferred. But what we do know is that there is an investigation by the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation into GE's role into all of this, and also the Special Investigating Unit and the Hawks in South Africa have officially launched investigations, and specifically the Hawks have confirmed to us that it is of a criminal nature. So although the payment has not yet been confirmed, the mere fact that there is correspondence which seems to indicate that the payment was effected has now led to an investigation.
So we have allegations, we have investigations, we have probes, we have different people doing different things.
Yes.
How many of these investigations have come to some sort of conclusion? I'm talking about an SIU finding or a finding. I think it's Bowman Gilfillan that were in one of the law firms that were investigating. Have many of them actually come to findings to be able to not just say, look, we think money went missing, but to actually point a finger at a group of people and say, we know money went missing?
Stephen, that's the frustrating thing about reporting this, and it's the frustrating thing, I think, for some of the law enforcement agencies like the Special Investigating Unit, who, like only look at civil claims. They pursue civil cases. We have not yet seen anyone go to jail in regards to this. Bowman started their investigation in 2018. Their mandate was suspended a year later after enormous internal resistance to the investigation. The Special Investigating Unit does not have sufficient resources to do what they need to do, and the National Prosecuting Authority has not yet taken anyone to court. No one has been prosecuted for any one of these crimes. We have reported that at least 60 criminal referrals have been made to the police by Eskom. A similar number have been made to the NPA by the SIU for criminal prosecution, but we haven't seen any criminal prosecutions. We've seen 1 or 2 arrests, but it's not enough. Given our history of state capture and rampant corruption, it's enormously frustrating for the South African public, certainly for the media and for law enforcement agencies that we have not seen people in orange overalls going to jail, because the amounts of money that literally, Stephen, have been carted out of Eskom is quite staggering.
What we do know is that we and Eskom did not get value for money. We spent a fortune on Kusile and Medupi, and the lights still go off.
Yes, you're right. And what we're trying to do with the Eskom files is try to explain to South Africans that Eskom used, in 2001, it was appointed the World Power Company of the Year by the Financial Times, which is quite a prestigious title. 20 years later, and Eskom is a broken company. It's saddled with debt of 411 billion rand, and almost half of that debt. If you look at the contracts that we write about, 178 billion, that's almost half Eskom's debt. South Africans suffer under bouts of load shedding quite regularly, but it's due to a culture of mismanagement, of corruption, rampant corruption, which has been allowed to flourish at Eskom. So I think there's a straight line to be drawn between mismanagement, corruption, and our lights that go off so regularly.
So, we've got all of these investigations. Is Eskom doing what it can do? You report about a large number of people who've been fired or are being investigated. Do you believe, from your reporting, that Eskom is doing what it can do to sort of reform itself?
It seems like it, Stephen, under the leadership of the new board chairperson, Professor Malechapuro Magoba, who took over in January last year alongside the new chief executive, Andre de Ruyter. They re-engaged Bowmans after the Bowmans probe was summarily and quietly stopped in 2019, and we will be revealing exactly what happened there. There is enormous resistance inside of Eskom, Stephen, to the reforms. There is also enormous nervousness in Eskom because Bowmans is now back at Megawatt Park doing the forensic work that they should have been busy with in 2019 when the investigation was stopped. So I think there's a concerted effort. There's certainly a determination by the chairperson of the board, as I understand it, to see through whatever reforms needs to happen. And we've obviously seen the assault on the Eskom Group Chief Executive the last couple of weeks. It seems like the moment when toes are stepped on, when forensic investigators get close to cash files, literal cash files, as it were, then the pressure is on. But it's an enormous mess, Stephen. To get your head around the extent, the depth, and the breadth of corruption is quite a big task, and I don't envy the management of Eskom, who have to not only keep the lights on, but they have to ensure maintenance of very old power stations, and they have to return the company to some form of financial sustainability. But I believe they are trying.
Pieter du Toit, Assistant Editor at News24, thanks very much indeed for your time. It's an astonishing story.